Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Your Pleasure Incorporated into Daily Living. I am your host, Ellen Nicholas Rathbone, sensuality consultant, author, sex educator, life coach, and most definitely a person who has experienced the wonderfulness of angels. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily believe in angels. They can't see them. There's just pictures in churches and stuff. And I can understand why they would doubt if you can't see it. But I just wanted you to consider for a moment you also can't see air. And yet, without it, you'd be dead. And you also cannot see germs or viruses with the naked eye. And yet, they could put you in the hospital. So, just because you cannot see it does not mean that it does not exist, because your five senses are limited to the material world. There are other worlds that our five senses are just not privy to. Now, I want to tell you that angels speak to us. Everybody has a guardian angel, and the guardian angel is for two reasons: wisdom and protection. And everyone has one. You could be the most horrible person in the world or the nicest person, and you will have angels helping you at any point in time. And I got to tell you, if you end up recognizing the help that they give you and you start saying thank you, they will be much more there for you in all of the situations that come up for you. Now, I want to tell you about three particular stories that are all true that happened to me. And there's no doubt in my mind that there was an angel at work. One of them, and it's just every time I think about it, it just kind of makes me shake a little bit. I was working and I was coming home, and it was about 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. And I was driving through Mattawan, and I was coming to a green light. There was a green light ahead of me. Now, no, normally when you see a green light, what do? You just continue with your foot on the gas and then just keep going. But for whatever reason, my foot got off the gas and I braked as I came to the intersection. And it's a good damn thing that I did, because not 2 seconds later, this car came out from my left, barreling at 70 miles an hour right through what would have been the red light for them and right past me. Now, if I had continued along my merry way, if I had not braked, that car would have smashed right into me. Now, why did I brake? That's the question you have to ask yourself, because most people, when they see a green light, they keep their foot on the accelerator. But for whatever reason, my foot came off and I was kind of like, And the next thing I knew, I see this car fly by me and I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody just saved my life. So that was one instance. Another time, I was working and I was selling Mary Kay cosmetics. And it was February and the snow was really deep. And I was driving a car that, didn't have a lot of gas in it. I didn't realize that when I left, but at that point in time, I didn't have a whole lot of money, and it was kind of difficult to keep the tank full. So I just finished my Mary Kay demonstration, and I stopped at a 7-Eleven because I wanted to get a cup of coffee because I was freezing. And, I had to make it home. I was in Piscataway. It was a good distance from where I wanted to go. So I thought, let me just go get this cup of coffee. So I turn the car off. I go inside. I get the cup of coffee. I come back out. I try to start the car again. The car will not start. Trying to turn it over again and again and again, nothing coming out of this car. So I'm thinking to myself, is it the gas? Don't I have any gas? But I had enough. So, I really did think there was just maybe a little bit of fumes to get me home. So what could it be? Well, I'm sitting there in the car and I'm thinking about, what am I going to do now? This was a time when there were no cell phones. I had just spent my last $1.50 on a cup of hot coffee. And, I really couldn't. How was I going to reach out to anyone? I didn't have AAA, didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a clue on what I was going to do next. So as I'm sitting there wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this mess? All of a sudden, somebody comes up to my window and they rap on the window. And I look out and I see this fellow, and it's a Muslim fellow. He has dark sunglasses on, and he's wearing this long, dark coat. I mean, it was 3/4 length, so it was like past his knees, maybe mid calf. And he had a scarf on, and he was wearing a hat, but you could definitely tell this was a Muslim fellow. And he knocked on my window and he said, "Do you need help?" And I said, "Yes, I absolutely need some help." I said, "Can you help me?" He says, "Just pop the hood. Let me see." So I said, "Okay." So I popped the hood and he did whatever he did. I was sitting in the car. He did whatever he did under the hood. And then he looks over, past the hood, and he goes, "Try it now." Okay. This guy never took his sunglasses off. I never got to see what he really looked like. He says, "Try it now." So I turn the ignition, boom, car starts right up. So he puts the hood down, and I'm looking in my car. What can I give this guy? How can I say thank you to this guy who just came out of nowhere in the middle of a blizzard? Because it was a blizzard and the snow was so deep and it was so incredibly cold out there. And I wanted to, I don't know, give him maybe one of my samples, one of my Mary Kay things. I just wanted to thank this guy. How was I going to thank him? And I look down, and then I look up to see where he is, and he's completely gone, completely gone. So I'm thinking, I'll leave the car running. I run inside the store. I said, "Did you see a fellow with dark glasses?" And, because nobody was on the street. Nobody was going left. Nobody was going right. Nobody on the street. Where did this guy come from? And more importantly, where did he go? Because he didn't go into the store. He didn't hop into a car. He just came out of nowhere and he went back to nowhere. And maybe he was a regular human being, but in that moment in time, he most definitely had angel work as his, because he came and he rescued me in no time at all. And not even, he didn't even stay for a thank you. I mean, he just came, he helped me, and then he was gone. He just disappeared. And I will never, ever, ever forget that. Then there was one other time. I was young, and I had been out on a date with a fellow who was an unscrupulous individual. And at one point, I realized that if I stayed on the date with this guy, that I was going to have a hard way to go. And I mean that literally and figuratively, because I knew if he had an opportunity to get me in a room alone, he was going to rape me. There was no doubt in my mind. So I just kind of walked away from that date and I said, "Rat, forget it. I'm just walking home." Now, considering that I was on the other side of Newark, and my home was about 5 miles away, and it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was one of the seediest sections of town. I was kind of taking my life into my hands. I had no change on me at all, nothing for the bus, nothing, no money at all. And again, no cell phone. There was no cell phones back then. And I was just planning on walking. I was going to do the 5 miles and I was going to walk home. And I felt like, at least if I'm walking home, I know I'm heading towards safety. Whereas if I stay here with this person and get in the car with this guy, I'm going to have a lot of trouble. So I decided I was going to walk. So about, I don't know, 2-3 minutes later, a car full of guys pulls up next to me. And they're all kind of like, "Hey, baby, you need a ride?" And I looked at these guys and I was like, "No, don't need a ride. Definitely not. Thanks anyway. Bye." So they kind of like made a couple of noises and whatever, and then they drove off. So I continued walking because I kind of knew where I was and I knew which direction I had to go in. And I walked for another 2-3 minutes, not even. and all of a sudden, this guy in a pickup truck pulls up next to me. And he's a little Hispanic guy. And he's about 50, 55 years old. And he pulls up next to me and he goes, excuse me, miss. And I said, yes. And I'm still walking and he's kind of driving along next to me. He says, it's not very safe out here at this time of night for a young lady to be walking the street. And I said, I understand that. And I definitely agree with you. I said, but I don't have any money. And I had to walk away from the date that I was on because that was even more dangerous than what's out here. So he says, well, where do you live? And I told him, and he said, well, I'm not going that way. He says, but I can take you to the bus and I'll give you some money so that you can take the bus. And I was like, really? And I could just read this guy's energy. It was non-threatening. It was just the kindest thing he could have done. And so I got in his truck. He gave me a ride, another 4 or 5 blocks it was to the bus stop. He waited with me at the bus stop. And when the bus finally arrived, he had given me the change. I got on and I was able to make it home. Now, there are many, many other instances in my life where whether it was an angel incarnate or it was just a gut feeling or it was an inspiration or an understanding or an epiphany or insight that got me to understand what the situation was around me. Because like I said, angels are for 2 reasons alone: wisdom and protection. And sometimes the wisdom is given to you. And if you are listening and if you are aware that you do have help unseen and unrecognized by your left brain, but your right brain knows it's there. And if you see it and if you recognize it and if you allow it to come into your life and help you, you will be so much better off. So your gut will speak to you, your heart will speak to you, your right brain, which doesn't always sound like it makes sense, it will also guide you. It's not so much words, but it's more of a feeling of this is the way that I want to go. Now, when the time happens that you also have some kind of miracle, and these little miracles happen, whether they're mini miracles or huge miracles, I've had both of them happen to me. I feel like the best thing you can do in that situation or after that situation has resolved itself is definitely say thank you. You should never walk around just thinking, oh, I'm so bad, man. I got everything beat. Now, you are being protected. And if you say thank you, I can guarantee you that more and more of these wonderful savings or saviors will show up in your life and pull your ass right out of the fire. So many times I had a gut feeling about something and I just went with it and it always turned out for the best. So sometimes you have to go through something crazy to understand that there is a power within you and that you are a child of God. And if you give the angels an opportunity to help you, they will. They absolutely will. But you have to know that they're there. You have to believe, and you definitely have to say thank you. So this is my talk today. Pleasure is part of knowing that you are not in this alone, that you do have help. And if you ask for help, for wisdom, for understanding, for guidance, you'll get it. But you got to ask, okay? So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Your Pleasure Incorporated into Daily Living. Looking forward to speaking with you next week. Oh, hi, Patricia. I'm so glad to hear you say that you experienced help from angels as well. And definitely a good idea to say thank you. I can't tell you how many times my butt was pulled out of a fire or from getting burnt just because I was saved from what could have been catastrophic. So they are definitely with us. You can't see them, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. Like I said, you can't see germs, but they exist too. So please recognize that you do have an angel, guardian angel. You also have helpers, you also have guides. And if you are open to these influences in your life, you will have a lot more serendipitous events, and things, life for you will flow so much better, because you're not just letting your analytical left brain make all the decisions and guide you through your life. You're actually allowing your divine right brain, your intuitive knowing, to also help guide you. So thank you so much for joining me this week. Join me again next week for another fun episode of Your Pleasure Incorporated into Daily Living. Namaste. Please do your Kegels. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.